It's time for Talking Pictures Trivia. A quick friendly reminder, lift with your knees. They're easier to replace than your back.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me as always is...
Tom.
Additionally, joining us as guests this week are...
Ragnar
and Byron.
Thanks for joining us, Ragnar and Byron. You may remember Ragnar from a variety of episodes, including other foreign films like M, The Phantom Carriage, and The Passion of Joan of Arc. Byron is also back from the Running Man episode. When not on our podcast, Byron is involved with the Black Professionals in International Affairs at BPIA Tweets on Twitter. Byron's wife is also the owner, creator, and graphic designer for Di Boho Mama at Di Boho Mama on Instagram. More than a purchase, a memory. Ragnar and Byron continue to conveniently like movies. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with the movie quiz, as these pivotal questions will determine who earns today's trivia crown. In round 1, each question is worth 1 point, and in round 2, each question is worth 2 points. Then, once the fierce competition is over, we followed up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Today we're going back to 2019. In 2019, we saw the largest toothpick sculpture display come to life, and Bong Joon Ho releases his 7th movie, Parasite, which won Best Picture over Ford and Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Nick will be quizzing us today. Nick, what is Parasite all about?
With this movie, I tried to start a trend with a Nick picking a KJ pick, hoping my co-hosts would play along to continue the trend, but they didn't. However, this was a film I wanted to see after it got a lot of hype with all the awards won at the Oscars, and have been patiently waiting for this episode to watch and discuss, steering clear of any spoilers or plot reveals. What is Parasite all about? This is another tough one to break down without giving away too much information. We're introduced to the Kim family, who barely is scraping by. Through sheer circumstance and cunning, the family is able to exploit the needs of the wealthy Park family for their own financial gain. But at what cost? Let's start the show and find out. Tom, if you only had one word to describe Parasite, what would it be?
Gestus. Ragnar?
Monumental. Byron?
Calculating.
And my word would be morphing.
It's time for question 1.
What university did the son of the Kim family, played by Woo Sik Choi, graduate from?
Locked in.
Could you repeat the question again? Sorry.
What university did the son of the Kim family, played by Woo Sik Choi, graduate from? There's some air quotes in there.
Locked in.
Locked in.
Ragnar, you're going to start us up.
Okay, so if I recall correctly, the son did not graduate from any college.
The question had air quotes.
Okay, so which one did he want to?
I'll let you go again.
So I get it now. With his degree. So I don't exactly remember the name of the university that he wink wink graduated from, but I'm gonna guess Yohei or something along those lines that I'm sure I'm mispronouncing.
Okay, Byron.
I think the Sun. Maybe I was thinking one of the other. So I'm going to go with Illinois State University.
Okay, Tom.
It's the Sun, right? That's what I locked in.
The Sun.
With. Yeah, I'm going to say, I think it's Yodong University is the one he didn't go to.
Okay, no points.
Yeah. What was it called?
It was Oxford University.
No.
Completely missed that one. What?
It's not.
It is. It is.
No.
It is.
It's
No
not.
way.
It's
He
not.
has a
It's a
degree
Korean
from, like,
name.
it's from Yo something.
Yeah.
Okay. It depends
I-
what version. It depends what version you watched. The good news
The
is
version that came out. What do you mean? What
nobody.
version is what?
So there was 2 releases. Okay, there was one for international. The good news is nobody got it right either way. Okay, but there was 2 versions. For the American version, it was Oxford. For the original version, it was Yonsei University.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's what we're
So-
going for.
So nobody got either of them. So it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Well, yeah, I would have gotten. I
Yeah.
probably would have remembered Oxford. 'cause
I
of-
was
Yeah.
in the Yo area.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
not
was
close
there
enough.
too.
Half point. Half point.
Yeah, I knew Yo.
I didn't hear any
Yo,
Yonsei.
Yo.
Yonsei. You had, but needless to say,
I'm surprised. What a strange edit for
Yes.
the international
So-
release. Of,
the reason that the director went in that direction was he wanted to make sure that the audience knew it was a very prestigious university. Whereas if you're not from there, you might not know that the Yonsei University is super prestigious. I did not until I read this tidbit about it.
Mhm.
But that's why. And so it depended. I had both of them as correct answers, depending on what versions people watched. The reason I brought this one up is to segue into the first part of this film, which I'm lovely referring to as the con job. Okay. So I wanted to talk about this intro to this film, what actually happens, how they creep their way into these people's lives. And the other part is, did you all think that that's the direction the movie was going to go in, or did you think it was going to go the way it did? So kind of open season on the con job and how the family operates.
When this was like, hitting all the festivals and everything, I purposely did not pay attention to it just because I was like, I'm not one for like really being like, oh, because it's getting all the attention, let me go tune into it. So I purposely did not tune into all that. So I did not know much about it. Saw a couple of previews here and there, saw kind of the top photo of the Kim family with their eyes kind of covered up. I was like, okay, well, obviously it's something about either somebody's identity being different than what they say it is. I feel like that was easy to figure out. But in watching the first act, I felt it was very quick to see that this is going to be a family that figured out a way to use or create identities for themselves to put themselves in a better position. I feel like that was an easy one to figure out. However, there were some twists and some turns that I greatly appreciated that were outside of kind of the making or establishing their identities, as well as bringing up the concepts of class, of socioeconomic standing, of looking at where they lived, so kind of geographical location, residences, and whatnot, and also opportunities. But I think in Act 1, I liked how they set it up to where it went from one family member to another family member to another family member, and they just kept working each other into the game.
Yeah, I agree. I like how, like a parasite, that family kind of took over the body of the rich family. Beyond the kind of like metaphorical and that kind of stuff. One of the reasons I love this movie, and I think it's just absolutely legendary, is the execution of something that maybe was not so surprising. You could tell very early on that they're going to take over that household. But it's the execution of how the movie did it that made it fresh and engaging the whole time. Not one scene, not one moment is wasted, and you can feel the energy coming off of this movie. And I think this might be a little bit hyperbolic, but I think it has full stop the best montage scene in any movie ever. That scene where they're bringing on the mother and how they're kind of like the peaches and all that montage and the talking and the acting and the no father, you have to put more emphasis on it and all that stuff. It was just unreal on another level, and I have never seen a montage scene that has worked better than that one.
All I could think of when all of that was going on was, if these people put their brain power to good use, they probably could have accomplished something, but they can only turn that on or trigger it in a devious manner. So it was great.
I love that.
And I was thinking, so, I wish I could remember the name of the movie. So thinking about what you said, Ragnar, about the montage scene, one of the scenes that I think a lot of people tend to remember is the movie with James McAvoy and Keira Knightley, the war movie, where there was just like
Atonement.
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 So that scene where they're on the battlefield, where it's just like the one shot and it's like the panoramic and everything. That is the scene that I thought of when I saw that family scene being set up, and how it was just like, going from the peaches to the mother, working her way in to the acting. And when you see that the son or whoever in the family has actually created a script and they're acting out, how to take the next step for the family to be where it needed to be. And what really hit me was, it wasn't that the family, I mean, they were, all of them were cunning, all of them were smart. I think, for the way that the dad Kim, how they played him as like a doofus or like a dud. I think with what he brought to the family, it was still that sense of intelligence, just not in the same way that everybody else did. Everybody else was confident in what they brought, whereas the dad, it was like, hey, you're a part of this puzzle. You're not the strongest part, but you're still a part of this puzzle. But I think the intelligence for all of them, I think, and I feel like because the movie really showed the alluded to some of the opportunity. For example, the son, he took the exam 3 or 4 times and still didn't get into university. So he's smart just by exposure to that test, which kind of qualified him to teach the daughter day high. But I think it was really the cunning, the intelligence of all of them to use what they know, what they've been exposed to, and it just so happened that their station in life was a low one. It didn't make them any less smart, but I think it really showed the opportunity that they were able to take advantage of based on their intelligence and their station in life.
Yeah, I suppose why I selected the 40-minute mark as the mark where I kind of felt I got it was this is around the point where you realize the chauffeur is going to be fired, or they have their designs upon his position. And that's the point where you see that this is not about a eat the rich narrative where these poor people sort of enact vengeance on them. It's not about people who necessarily have class awareness, but who briefly acquire it. And so at that point, you see that they are simply trying to unearth, or unearth is the opposite metaphor. They're trying to elevate themselves into another sphere of capitalism, if you want to call it that, and then push themselves beyond that and beyond that, beyond that. It's a kind of a Marcusian critique of what people, a term I hate, but people call late stage capitalism. And once you see that's what's happening, it's not about revolution. It's about the totality and machinations of desire within this system that I was kind of like, okay, I get where we're going here. I get the, I see the direction.
Tom, I was just gonna, that what you just said is one of the reasons why I really liked the film, because it wasn't revolution. It wasn't your typical eat the rich kind of thing. If anything, it was the poor family trying to work their way up to another level and doing the very same things that they critique rich people of doing, which is stepping on the little guy. How did they get those? So those positions were taken by ripping out somebody else and throwing them out and going into the position.
My mentioning of that was not to say that this was a bad thing. It was just, that's why when I said before I kind of got it after 40 minutes, that was the thing that triggered that. I kind of understood the direction of the film.
It's time for question 2.
Oh, you guys are going to love this one. It's a timestamp question.
Oh God, these freaking things.
At what timestamp in this 2-hour, 12-minute film did things get real for the audience, having us question the Kim's flawless plan?
Locked in.
Again, there's a little bit of subjectivity to this one, but I think I can back it.
Locked in.
Locked in.
Byron, give it a go.
Oh man, I want to say, what was it? When they decided to try to go after the position of the housekeeper. So when they were saying, when they figured out what her allergies were, and they were just really trying to see how they could get her out because of how attached she was to the family.
You got to give me a random timestamp that you think that's when it occurred.
Oh my goodness! Let's go with 1 hour, 1 hour 8 minutes.
And Price is Right rules are in force as usual. I believe it was Ragnar.
So it all starts going downhill during that evening in the living room, drinking whiskey and all that stuff, I believe, when they got the call from the old housemaid. And a wild shot here, half court, 1 hour and 10 minutes is what I've written down.
Okay, Tom, what did you write down?
I didn't write anything down, but I had 1:15.
So all I got to tell you, and I got to be honest with what I wrote down on the paper here, no one is getting the points. You are all super, super close. So I put...
Is it 120?
No. Price is Right. So you got to be under, not over.
Oh.
Yeah. So
wait, what are you considering it going to pot?
the actual timestamp is 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 36 seconds. Okay. So we're very close. Again, unfortunately, we're going to be no points after round one.
What action? What action?
What I felt was the scene. Ragnar was the closest in thought. Where I really thought the plan started to unravel, okay, things getting real, was when we see the old housekeeper open the door to the bunker, which is when their flawless plans start to unravel. So Ragnar was very close, but I got it at the exact moment that the door was fully opened. That's the scene.
There is when the old housekeeper rings the doorbell, and the new housekeeper, the mother, says, "Who's this?" And they're like, "It's the old housekeeper. What do we do?" The son says, "I don't know. This wasn't in the plan."
That's what I had. I had the ringing of the bell.
Either way,
slightly before the opening
either way,
of the door,
we were all above.
Either way, that makes us more wrong.
Either way, you're all above. But I would have
expected
expected something in that space. So unfortunately, the points will not go to anyone. But I wanted to bring up the thought of survival and how it's depicted in this film. They're all trying to survive in this world. They don't have the same luxuries or starting point as some of these other people who are more affluent. But we find out this housekeeper, who looked all prim and proper when we were first introduced to her, is all kinds of disheveled and unorganized and rambly when she comes in the dripping wet rain to the house. Interesting thing, she cut the neighbor's video feed to show that she had come back. That's when I think we see that a lot of them are all doing the same thing. They're trying to find a way to survive. So let's talk about survival.
Wonderfully set up. I think, just like you said, like when thinking about where it may all seem to unravel, when it goes back to what was it? The war, and she was explaining like how a lot of the rich had set up these basements and semi basements to last and to survive. You think about even the rich are trying to figure out how to stay alive. They're trying to figure out how to make it, and then you have those that are serving them who are trying to figure out how to make it. And it's just like one step after another. You have the maid, the housekeeper, who is it's her and her husband, and then now you got the Kim family who are in the game, and so it's just like nobody is consuming the other, but they're all trying to figure out how to live with one another and get what they can. And I think this was what I found very interesting about this movie, with the term parasite, is that eventually, a parasite will consume what it needs, and it either takes over the host or it dies. And so I think with this one, though, the relationship of having two entities feeding off of each other, and at one point possibly three entities feeding off of each other. And so it was, this obviously, this is a movie that you can see the class warfare in it, or at least the class awareness to an extent. But it was also seeing, when the mother of the rich family, when she can't wash dishes, and she's like, oh, I wished I did not have to do this. When you have the husband who's like, my wife can't cook or clean for anything, we need a housekeeper right away or things are going to go to pot. So it's everybody trying to figure out how to make do by or through somebody else's devices, so that way they can still stay in the game.
Yeah, it imagines survival within the zero-sum framework, that your survival will come at the expense of someone else's. That's the way it has it really loves its bug metaphors, and that is a insect kind of way of living. Is the zero-sum way of living, and that is what their survival is based on. However, they're also pretty dull to the circumstances that place them in this position. There isn't that spark of awareness, except for a moment towards the end, of what they're in. And in fact, I would say that the tragedy of the film, or the tragedy the film purports to be, is a tragedy of unawareness. It's not the tragedy of death or loss or something like that, but it's the inability for revolution to come about, right? And the fact that what we see is that eventually what becomes the parasite is the desire for more, which in the end, it doesn't consume the man in the basement, though he is a suckling and officious person who wishes that the boss was still alive again. The parasite comes for the boy, who will become the next master, who will become the next thing. And this idea, this kind of desire for more and more capital, for more and more stuff, that becomes the thing that hooks onto them. And that's what the tragedy of the film is. It isn't the man in the basement.
Yeah, it's interesting how the man in the basement is the older gentleman. He's an older man, and the one who wants more is the younger man. The older man has gone through that phase and is now just content to live out his life in some kind of comfort, which in this one is essentially a little womb down in the underground. And it's the son and the daughter, the young, that want more. And I can't say anything more in depth than what you guys have said about survival. But I do think that when the survival aspect is brought into it, in terms of it's either you or me, because I guess in the first half of the movie, they're surviving by taking people out and getting their position. In this half of the movie, they're in direct, violent conflict with people of their own rank, so to speak. But that's also when the movie kind of turns. We talked about genres earlier. One of the strengths and weaknesses of Korean cinema is they try to fit a lot of genres into one movie instead of breaking their movies out into very distinct genres like in the West, at least in my opinion. I think that this movie did an incredible job of melding the genres together so well that I had no idea what I was watching. There's no movie like this. There's all sorts of aspects coming to it. There's comedy, there's horror, there's melodrama, there's sexuality, there's class warfare, and all in the 2-hour and change movie. I think this is what's going to give this movie legs to be watched decades from now.
At the end of round one, I'm sad to report there are 0 points, but the good news is these were only 1-point questions, so anything can happen in round two. We'll be right back after these quick messages from one of our valued sponsors.
This episode of Talking Pictures Trivia is sponsored by Your Car Warranty. We've been trying to reach you about your car warranty. And we thought that this specific episode of Talking Pictures Trivia was the perfect way to reach out to you about extending your car's warranty. Thank you, and please enjoy the rest of the episode.
And we're back. We're at the critical point of our episode where we ask the guests a key question. So this one goes out to both Ragnar and Byron. If you could watch Parasite with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
First one that came to my mind actually was Jean-Michel Basquiat. And that was because there was this scene. Well, it's funny because I didn't even think about it until I had rewatched it. Because this is my second time watching it. But the first, it was thinking about the themes of capitalism throughout this movie. And recently I've been, you don't know, but I've been like looking at things around, Jay-Z and Beyonce's success, Rockefeller Records. Now how a lot of people are saying that Jay-Z is kind of taking on the persona of Jean-Michel Basquiat. And so in watching this, I would love to have a discussion with Basquiat to see what he thought about, like, earlier we talked about survival, we talked about classism, we talked about, I think, obvious tropes of racism, but it was also thinking about what does capitalism do to all classes. And then it was the reference in the movie, which really surprised me by Bong Joon Ho, was the scene with the son when the mother actually references the son's paintings looking like Basquiat. And so I would love to have a conversation with him about this movie to talk about capitalism and classism at its core.
Okay, over to you, Ragnar.
That's a good answer. I feel like I in these questions that I get asked every time I'm a host, I always give just like the lamest answers. I never pick like someone cool or celebrity. I always pick like, random guy off the street.
So you're gonna follow that.
So now I gotta follow the best answer to that question yet, with the lamest answer to that question yet, and that is with literally any South Korean cinephile, literally any of them. Because I feel like this movie has so much of the South Korean culture in it, with the rock, the houses, the apartments, the little song. When the daughter's about to go into the house for the first time, she does this song and she moves her fingers a certain way to remind herself of the story. Little things like that, those little details that add depth to this movie. I want to know from someone that's very familiar with the culture, which I am not. What do they mean? How do you use them? Or is this something from your childhood? And maybe there is a deeper understanding for a Western audience to have watching it with someone through that lens.
It's time for question 3.
What triggered the father, played by Kang Ho Song, to murder the wealthy father, played by Sun Kyun Lee?
Locked in.
Tom was quick on that one.
Locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Byron, start us up.
It was seeing the way that the dad, the rich dad, basically just dismissed the husband from the basement who had a skewer in his kidney with the brats hanging off of it just to get the keys. And then it was the action of him holding his nose. And I think it was that thought of him thinking about, if he thinks of him this way, he definitely thinks of me the same way. That repulsion of the smell of the subway riders, of the poor, of somebody like him. And it was that moment where you could see he just snapped. And it was like, well, this is what my life is going to be. That is my answer.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. It was the smell. It was him covering his nose. And I think that smell thing was the most effective class warfare thing that I've ever seen in any movie, where it's like, I don't even like the way you smell. And they brought it up many times. He smelled his own shirt many times. But right there, with the stress that was going on, he sees him just, even then, even when there's death all around him, he's still like repelled by this poor man's smell. I think that was a great scene.
Yeah, I had the same thing. It was the smell. He had mentioned when under the table, the father of the rich family, that Mr. Kim smelled like radishes, and that smell when the when the crazed man attacks them, his response is holding the nose is what triggers that knife wielding.
Congrats. Everyone gets 2 points. We got some points on the board. I agree that the reference to the smell as the differentiator was really well done, because even if you were dressed up in the right clothes, you were in your best behavior, they could still identify you as, for lack of a better term, inferior because of an unknown aroma around you because of where you live and how you live your life. So I thought that was quite powerful. And it's amazing how that sense is what made this guy flip. Powerful.
It's the only time where he sees the world the way, let's say, the director of the film sees the world, right? It's the only time where he realizes that the enemy is not the people on his level, but these people who he fantasizes about, aspires to be. Imagine that his son will one day be the son-in-law of. And that becomes that kind of moment of class warfare, very brief moment of class warfare, and it's immediately kind of squashed. And it's not squashed by authority; it's squashed by that kind of spark going out. Mr. Kim himself kind of quiets it or pushes it back down or ceases to see it, and the tragedy isn't that death. I mean, we don't care about the rich father anyway. He's not a developed character. He's just sort of a stand-in for capitalism bad. He does. I don't think he has a discernible personal characteristic in the entire picture. But the tragedy of the film follows that. And as I said before, it's the son never developing class consciousness, never developing revolution, and perpetuating the system.
2 things. I think that the son at the end did develop it when he asked Jae-hai, the rich daughter, do I belong with these people or your people? And then at that moment, he's like, I'm going to go back downstairs to check on the people who were like me. So I think it was at the end where it actually hit him. Even though he's asking her, does he belong? He knows that he doesn't.
I was going to say, but then what happens at the very end?
Oh yeah, then at the very end, it all goes to crap.
Yeah, it all goes to crap.
Yeah. Wait, I think I read that scene differently. I thought he was going down to finish the job so that he could get this life, and he dropped the rock. So I think he was trying to finish the job so that he could earn his way into this lifestyle.
It depends on how we view the rock or talk about the rock. Is that the next?
That was his opportunity rock.
The rock is a very important thing that I just don't understand.
Is the next question about the rock? Because not the Nicolas Cage movie.
I'm sure we can. Yeah. But I took it as that was his rite of passage to get what he wanted to be part of that world, and it went astray when he dropped the rock and the guy got the jump on him, and it kind of went crazy. But again, that's how I read.
I mean, maybe you could read it as like he was going to present them with the rock, like here's a rock of opportunity. But
in their skull. Exactly. But he got it.
I think he was on his way down to do some harm to those people because he brought the rock. Where the sister is the one that had the empathy, because she was trying to bring down food. Where he was bringing down
the mother was also on board too with that.
Yeah, but
it got crazy last night.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing is,
I know.
The thing is with the rock, the rock is this thing that when it's given to him, it's said, this will bring you great wealth. It's the scholar's rock. It will bring you great wealth. When he's in the homeless shelter, the gymnasium after the flood, it clings to me, he said of the rock. I can't let it go. And when he could finally let the rock go is when he comes up with a plan to join the system. When he decides that he's going to become the next generation of capitalists, that's when he puts the rock away. It puts the rock in the stream. He walks beyond it. I don't know if he's going into the basement to kill them, or maybe it is I always felt that it was much more sympathetic. That he, I don't really see the evidence of that. It seems to be that he is aware of his class once he looks out there and it's like, I don't belong here. And then he's going down there. And I think honestly, to be with them, to present it. I mean, the rock tends to be the thing that ties him to the world in a bad way. And it also becomes his awareness of that bind. And when he's able to kind of leave his class awareness completely defined, leave his class, any chance of him establishing class awareness behind, is when he loses the rock, when he's able to just give it up. He can't, until he's ready to become a capitalist, it clings to him, right? And so I always read it as a sort of a familiar for his class consciousness.
It's time for question 4.
How do the ghosts communicate?
Oh, locked in.
Locked in.
Dude, do you have any bonus questions, dude?
I have one and some others.
I think I'm about to fall behind here. How do the ghosts communicate? Locked in.
Ragnar, with all that confidence.
The ghosts. Morse code.
Byron?
Morse code as well, through the light.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Morse code through the light in the...
Ragnar, you snuck in there. Yep, definitely Morse code.
Woo!
He's in there.
Mm.
You remember how I said I didn't want to go deeper until we discussed the ending? Let's discuss the ending, because I think I think a few of us might have different reads.
Well, what's your reading, Nick? We haven't heard you.
So, yes. So this film is all about the haves and the have-nots. Even the symbolism of where they live. One lives up on the hill. Everything is high. The only thing they fear is maybe bombs from above, hence the shelters, okay? And everything else rolls downhill. In fact, they're at the lowest spot, but you can get lower. They're halfway down into a basement. So they are ascending as far as they can to get a glimpse of this. Now, my read at the end, after he figures out that the father is in the shelter, and they go through this whole thing, I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to get that house. I think, because this movie is not a movie for happy endings, I think he will never be reunited with his father and it will never be attained. I think it's a fantasy, and I think it's an illusion that he's telling himself that he will get there. I think that's the opinion. And if you have that opinion, that goes back to The Rock and smashing their heads as the only way to get to that part. So based within the confines of the film and how he's presenting these characters and the social structure, that is my read, which fundamentally changes maybe our enjoyment of the film, but also our read on what is trying to be portrayed. And that was, I don't know if any of you agree with me. I know Tom is dying to say how he doesn't agree with me. But I want to hear both. I want to hear if anyone read it the same way I did or not.
I have a thing that connects very closely to Nick, but Tom, if you're eager to go.
I was going to say the tragedy would be that he does get the house. That's the tragedy. The tragedy is that not only that he would get the house, the tragedy is that he wants to get the house. The tragedy is he wants to become the next Mr. I don't even remember the rich guy's name.
The Park family.
The Park, sure, Mr. Park. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's the tragedy of the film. Whether he gets there or not is almost to a certain degree inconsequential. I mean, we kind of want him to reunite with his father because that's very nice. But the tragedy of the film is that he wants the house. And the tragedy of us as viewers is that we want him to want the house and to get the house.
Want is different than getting, though. He wants it. I'm saying that he wants
that's
it.
The problem.
I'm saying
that's
he will
the
never
problem.
get it.
That problem is he wants it. The problem is he is not in revolution. He's not going into revolution. The problem is he isn't overthrowing the blah, blah, whatever, the bourgeoisie, the upper class, the people on the top of the hill. The point is he wants to be them. That's the tragedy of the picture. The tragedy of the picture is
we're looking at it from a different angle, but we're both saying the same thing, that he's not going to get it.
We're not saying the same thing at all.
No, Tom's saying it doesn't matter if he gets it or not. The desire for the house is what is the tragedy.
I'm agreeing that it's the desire, but I'm also saying that he's not going to get it.
I'll put it another way. The high comedy, the comic point that's the height of this film is when Mr. Park gets stabbed. When the knife goes into Mr. Park's deltoid, which somehow kills him, that's the point of the movie in which we're at the comic mode. This is the point when revolution can happen. This is the point when the farce of fantasy can dissolve into the celebration of blood, if you want to call it that. The tragedy is that spark goes out immediately. The tragedy is that we saw the beloved, but she didn't turn around in time. Whatever analogy you want to draw. That's the tragedy. The tragedy is not that he will or won't get the house. Inconsequential, I think.
I'd like to hear everyone else's thoughts on this, because I'm not saying it's inconsequential. I'm agreeing that the tragedy is that he won't get it, but I'm saying
that's not what I said.
Oh, no, hold on. The tragedy is that he wants to follow the path that would allow him to get it. But I'm saying I agree that that's what he wants, but he also will not get it. I'm saying in addition to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think mine is like a kind of Goldilocks of the two, or probably not at all. I don't know. But I think that the change for The Rock and the son happens after the violence. Before the violence, when he is in his students' and girlfriend's room, looking down at the people, and they're playing the cello and they're chopping wood and everyone looks beautiful. He says, "Do I look like I belong?" He doesn't, and the way I read it is that he's not saying I don't belong, or he finds out, or he puts himself. He's admiring them and hoping to belong, but realizing maybe I don't, and still wanting to belong by doing the same things that he had done up to this point, which is stepping on someone else on his level. So that's why I feel he was going down there to resolve the issue of the basement, perhaps with violence, so that it doesn't get in his way of him scheming and scamming his way to the top. After the violence, after he's changed physically and emotionally, I mean, he had brain surgery and all that stuff, then he made a different resolution to himself. He said, I'm going to go work. I'm going to go make money instead of scheming, scamming, pushing other people aside. I'm going to go make money, and then I'm going to go buy the house. So I think I'm tying it back to the previous question as to my reading is slightly different, that he was going down there with peace or some kind of be with them compassion. I don't think that was the case. And I think that's why. And the ending, to me, it's more about like the human condition, maybe more so than economic condition and revolution. I think Bong Joon Ho, there is no revolution. There is not going to be a revolution. And it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen because of the human desire. It's always going to be there. And I don't think he takes a stand on it. I know it looks like he does, but he paints the poor family in a negative light. They're lazy. They're a lazy family that only motivate themselves when there's immediate money there and scheming, like Nick said earlier. That's the only time they're motivated. Other than that, they're just on the toilet trying to find a free Wi-Fi signal. And you're not going to get anyone like that.
The thing is, they did get somewhere in life. They got the best job they probably have ever had, even if it was for a brief minute. Where I focused on during for the end of the movie, it wasn't so much the son and trying to figure out him. It wasn't him trying to figure out if he belonged or where he belonged. For me, it was the demise of the dad's dream. That moment when he realized he had crossed the line, one, with the park dad, when the park dad told him, "I'm paying you more. This is your job." That moment was like, even because there was a moment in the movie where the park dad had said to his wife, he keeps getting right at the line and he does not cross it. That's why I like him. And then that moment when he crossed that line with a native headdress on at a kid's party, which has nothing to do with the scam or the con or the ascension to the next, financial level. it was in that moment, he was like, okay, well, I made a grievous error in stepping over the line. Then it was the operatic scene of the dad seeing his daughter who had just gotten stabbed. I think it was not knowing where his son was. It was his wife also injured. It was him having to figure out how to choose between the ones he loved and a job that would get them out of the basement situation that they were in. I mean, basement as in they were literally at a point in their residence where people were peeing down on them. And to be at that point where you are solo to where somebody has to use the bathroom on you, and then in the moment of so much tragedy, chaos, and death, and thinking, who do I save? How do I get out of this? Do I go get the car for the kid? You know, what do I do? Who do I save? How do I get out of this? And that fear on his face in that scene was really what touched me, knowing that there was no way that there was a good ending for anybody in that situation, and particularly him as, you know, the father, as the husband, as the head of his family, of the Kim family.
Okay, we have a tie game, 4 points all. So of course we got to go to bonus round.
Woo woo.
It's time for a bonus question.
What was the body count in this film? I need an exact number. And I'm only giving you 10 seconds.
Locked in.
Locked in.
10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tom.
I had 4.
I also had 4.
I want to go with 3.
The answer is actually 4. So it's down to Ragnar and Tom. You each get
double
points there.
overtime.
So we got to go into another bonus question. If you were curious who the death count was, it was the daughter, the father, Mr. Park, the lady, and her husband.
It's time for a bonus question.
Actually, it's more of a statement. The housekeeper brings this beverage to Mrs. Park to calm her.
Locked in.
Locked in. We're talking about the original housekeeper.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, locked in.
Ooh, locked in.
Byron, what do you got?
I want to say it was plum wine.
Okay, Ragnar.
Early on in the movie, when her son is upstairs, the housekeeper offers to bring her plum extract with some honey to calm her down.
Tom?
I'm sorry, I had the same thing.
Okay, everyone said plum. I'm going to give that to everybody.
All right.
Okay, now you're going to make my life difficult, aren't you?
It's time for a bonus question.
When the Kim family starts to get some money, instead of having fast food as a big feast in their house, what is the type of restaurant they go to celebrate?
Oh.
Locked in.
Oh, locked in. I just remembered.
Locked in.
Ragnar, you're going to start us up.
So when they start to get a little bit of money, they go to a buffet-style restaurant for other workers. I believe there were also drivers in that restaurant.
My answer is the buffet for drivers.
I would call it an EDR, casino term, but executive dining room. So basically the dining room for the drivers.
Unfortunately, you're all correct. It was they called it a driver's cafeteria.
It's time for a bonus question.
The way this question will work is there are 3 potential answers. You will get a point for each correct answer. What are the names of the park's 3 dogs?
Oh. God.
This is the decider.
No, I don't even remember one.
It's anybody's game. Technically, Byron can come back.
Damn you, Nick.
Hey, when you're in like mega bonus time, you gotta go with the heavy hitters.
Locked in.
Yeah, I'll lock in something. Yeah.
Say those magical words, Ragnar.
Locked in.
Okay. So, what are the name of the pups?
Fifi, Flufu, and Zumi.
Fifi, Fufu, and what was the last one?
Zumi, Zuli, Zoo.
Okay.
Something with a Z.
I got it. Okay. Who was I gotta write these things down.
I don't know who.
You don't have to
clocked in
write
next.
mine down. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I think it was Byron. I'm not even sure.
It was Terry or Barry? It was Zuni, Barry, and Fufu. Zuni, Barry, and Fufu is my answer. Terry.
Okay.
Yeah, Barry.
And Tom?
I'm gonna say I had Floofy. That was the thing I locked in with, and I'm also gonna say to try and at least get one. Flu you and flu. This is called filling the margins. That's how I try to get.
Well, I will tell you that although he's not going to win the episode, Byron was very on the money with this one. It was Zumi, Barry, and Fufu. However, Ragnar had a Fufu, okay?
Oh.
And Zuli, the Zuni.
I said Zumi.
Close enough.
It was Zuni.
Yeah. So
I said
it was
Zumi.
it was Zuni,
Right.
not Zumi.
No, I said
Oh.
Zuni.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you were right.
Oh,
You
What
were
did I
right. So
say?
you said like
Zuni,
not
Barry, and Fufu.
not Zuni. So yes, Tom and Byron are actually going to tie for second, but Ragnar is going to sneak the win in here.
Mhm.
Whether it was Fufu, Zumi, Zuli, you still were ahead. So I'm going to do that. You got them both. You're
Wait,
ahead
what was
by
it? Quadruple overtime?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we finally
Yeah.
got it. We got a winner. Okay. It was a tight match all the way to the bitter end once people started answering questions correctly. So
It's time for Movie Rent.
Thinking about how the Kim family worked together all the time. There was a scene with the pizza girl where it was the son, I think, starts talking with her, and as he's talking with her out of the scene, then all of a sudden the daughter comes in, and then as they're talking, the camera starts to zoom in, and then out of the left frame comes the mom. And it was the way they cornered her as one person to get what they wanted, which was, to get the job and to get paid for the pizza boxes. Then later it was how they converged on all of their goals as a family. Even when the dad was getting made fun of for his smell, it was still the family. They would make fun of each other, but only to the point of we still are focusing on what we all need and want to get, which is jobs, which is to the next level, to get whatever, materialistically or whatever the case may be. But I really, as a family unit, I loved how they worked together. And I think that collectivist approach, it also speaks to, Korean, South Korean culture of we do things as a unit, no matter what is happening around us. And I thought that all those scenes and how it showed that mentality were beautiful, whether it was the music highlighting it, whether it was in tragedy or triumph, whether it, no matter where they were, it was that they worked as a unit, as a family, with a very ideal approach, as in we all win when we stick together.
Well said. Yeah, that was excellent. What I want to say is a little bit external to the movie, just slightly. So if, Tom, if there's anything you want to say about the movie itself proper, maybe.
Go for it. Go.
Okay.
Say your.
I just wanted to say, first I want to ask Tom, have you seen a lot of, just out of curiosity, have you seen a lot of South Korean films before? Or just
Not really, no. I mean, I've seen the Old Boy. I've seen Old Boy. but not a tremendous amount.
That's just kind of a side thing.
Mhm.
For those of us that love the film, I want to talk just briefly about why I think it's a very important film. And I think you might agree, you guys can agree that regardless how you felt about the film. South Korea, while they've been making movies for decades, I feel recently they've gone through their kind of golden age of film. And there are absolutely incredible films to be seen in South Korea. And there have been two attempts to bring Western audiences and into the fold. The first one is to take the director, the writer-director, out of their cinema, out of their Hollywood, so to speak, and drop them into California for them to make movies with American actors and plot. And we've done that with Kim Joo-woo, with Park Chan-wook, and Bong Joon Ho, with The Last Stand, Stroker, and Snowpiercer. And I think those have all been failed attempts. I think those movies were poor and did not show what these directors can do. The other way of doing it is remaking the films. Well, we talked about Old Boy before. Old Boy was made by an extremely talented director, Spike Lee. It didn't work out. It's not as good. It's nowhere near as good. It happened with an Argentinian film, The Secret in Their Eyes, which is one of the greatest foreign films of all time, the original one, and the American remake didn't work out. It's not good. So there's something about the barrier there. And I feel like we've been trying to figure it out. And I'm not talking about cinephiles that we all know these movies and they're very popular amongst our circle. I'm talking about the everyday person. I think Parasite's important because it's the first one that, as is, the South Korean film was on the big screen. It wasn't remade and it wasn't with American actors. It was just shown in America in the big screen. The first South Korean film I've ever seen on the big screen. It was talked about in the Oscars. It won the Oscar award. And it's not important because the Oscars are important, but it's important because it brought a foreign film to everybody. Everybody knows about it now. So I think it's going to usher in a new age of the common moviegoer, so to speak, being opened to foreign films as they are, without remakes, without dubbing, and without being made into our culture. So that's just the rest I want to go.
I believe I represent that because this is a film that caught my attention, and I don't know any other, Korean films. Like, I don't know any. Usually, and I was joking early on, our man behind the curtain here, KJ, brings our foreign films, especially of the Asian variety, to our attention. And I went out of my way to say, this is my pick for this week. I want to see this because I've heard so much about it, and I did enjoy it. So there's a perfect example. I tend to bring nostalgia films, pop culture films, all those things to our, viewers here, or listeners here, I should say. And I decided to go with Parasite, which is outside of the norm for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy other cultures' films get exposed. I think the ideology undergirding the film is entirely Western. But that's fine. These things there's a sort of a hybridity, I think, between various cultures going on here. My problem ends up just being with the picture itself, not the fact of like Korean films being exposed to Western audiences, obviously. And I just find the film, I think what it is for me, farce would be a really great kind of socialist commentary type thing, kind of the Marxist genre, so to speak. Farce is something kind of like what Brecht did in the 30s and 20s and 40s. Here we have what seems like it's going to start into farce and then moves into this kind of real tragic mode. And what it ends up doing is it brings in this kind of realism, even though we've been given some of this farcical frame, and farce has much more elastic boundaries when it comes to realism. And so it just feels kind of like hard to buy. And the characters, a lot of them are not developed, and the capitalists are, they're just unaware and either stupid, as in the case of the mother, or you just self-involved, or in the case of the father. I mean, he's not even self-involved. He's just a stand-in for that kind of ideology. And I think if you look towards somebody like Brecht and see what his epic theater did for kind of these socialist ideas, how they use them, or a modern version of Brecht, something like Herbert Ross's 1980s film Pennies from Heaven, I think you could see the kind of mode, or the kind of mood rather, and the kind of tone that really would sustain this type of criticism.
I find this fascinating because we all have difference of opinions. Even when we like it for different reasons, or if we dislike it, it's also for different. So, and the only ones I can really talk about between Tom and I, because we seem to be in different areas on this one, especially since it was our first watch, how you interpret some of this seems to affect your enjoyment of the film. So it's just quite fascinating to me how, and this is why I love movies, is that you can have two different people and they can agree on other movies and have a completely different opinion on something like this. I thought it was a good movie to have a conversation about because it does have these emotions.
Yeah, I just I don't mean to keep going on, but I just wanted to emphasize this. It's not really the ideology that I found frustrating. It was the presentation of it. I not to say that I'm agreeing with the ideology. That wasn't it. It was these other things that I had a problem with, but I'll let it go.
No, again, we're gonna go back and forth. But again, these are the type of movies I enjoy watching and discussing, especially on this podcast, when we don't all just sit here and agree with each other. Like we like different elements or we dislike certain areas. So it tends to be more fun if you don't all agree with everything. I'd like to once again congratulate our winner of the week, Ragnar, who took it in mega bonus rounds. Congrats, Ragnar. Really didn't know which way it was going this week.
We're all winners this round. We're all winners.
Especially Ragnar.
The diplomatic.
Or losers.
The diplomatic approach. In addition to our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. We are extremely grateful for any positive reviews, as those help others like you find us. If you like what you hear, remember to like and subscribe to our show. How good did that steak look when it was being cut up, and why? Let's continue the conversation on Twitter at Talking Studios. I think any of our vegetarian listeners may have a difference of opinion. Have additional thoughts? Email us at talkingpicturestrivia@gmail.com or give us a call at 201-467-8679 for a chance to be featured on one of our future From the Listeners episodes. Thanks again, Ragnar and Byron, for joining us today.
I love coming on here and stumbling my way through my thoughts of the given movie, and you guys keep asking me for me to come back. I really appreciate it.
And I love being on this show. Love talking movies and cinema, whether it is stateside or international. So just thank you for having me on. And if you want, you can find me at Byron L. Williams. That is BYRON L. Williams on Twitter.
And you can find me at Thomas Lehman 15 on Twitter, and look for our sister podcast, Talking Pictures B-Side.
I can also be found on Twitter at The Nickname. Join us next time when we discuss our friend Doug's recommendation from 1984, Ghostbusters. Stay tuned for our first impressions of this film. Ding, 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 ding. Today's movie is going to be Ghostbusters from 1984, the original. So what were your initial thoughts?
I have to say, I think the thing
outside of Bill Murray that I love about this movie is that the EPA is the villain. In my cold heart, I love that so much. I don't think I've seen another movie where the EPA is the villain. And, like there's this like private business that becomes the better alternative to academia. I that part of it I love so much. And then, of course, the best part of it is Bill Murray. I think outside of Bill Murray, there really isn't much of a movie here, but it's pretty wonderful to watch him sort of waltz in and put the movie in his back pocket. That is what I enjoyed about this movie this time out.
This movie was definitely my introduction to Bill Murray way back in the 80s when I first saw it. I originally came to the Ghostbusters through the cartoon. And then this movie I found after. It's like, oh, I really like the real Ghostbusters. Here are the same characters, but this is wildly different. And for a young kid, maybe a little inappropriate at times. But I really, this is pure nostalgia for me. This is like one of my favorite movies from being a kid. And I remember having all the toys and the Ghostbuster firehouse and everything. This was a walk down memory lane to watch this one again.
This came out the year I was born, so I don't remember when I first saw it exactly, but yeah, I remember seeing pieces of it. And I'm not sure when I saw the full movie in its entirety, but definitely my favorite Bill Murray movie. And yeah, just a good time.
I was trying to think what my introduction to Ghostbusters actually was. And I wasn't sure if it was Ghostbusters 2, which is one of those rare occasions where you might see the sequel first. But just like Chris, it probably was the cartoon because I remember the action figures. And I think I may have seen 2 before I actually saw 1, just because of timing of when it was released and all that into the theaters. I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. Probably the last time I saw it was on cable because it's one of those things where you see it on and I actually can watch bits and pieces because I know it so well. But I really enjoyed this rewatch because I haven't sat down and watched it, in one sitting for quite some time. So I'm really looking forward to discussing this one with everybody.